Hello, everybody.
Hello, guys.
Everybody who is still waiting for the book, do not worry. We promise to sign every single book with everybody's name. But now you have to have incentives, and incentives drive behavior. You have to stay here and hear us speak. Okay. Alex and I had a great privilege to have been working with a lot of large companies and venture capital firms around the world. And recently, there's been a lot of interesting stuff about AI. And what we figured out is that the venture mindset that we started developing years and years ago, I started developing it when I came to Stanford 20 years ago, and then Alex joined me when he became my student at Stanford, that the venture mindset is really applicable to the world of AI. So what we're going to do today is very briefly discuss the principles of the venture mindset, but also see how it can transform the today's environment. But first of all, a quiz. Attention everybody, here is the quiz. If you are my MBA students, then you would be able to get a brownie point for a very, very tough class on venture capital that I teach at Stanford. This is the Easter Parade in New York City in 1900, and this is a very beautiful photograph. And you see a lot of horse-driven carriages. There's exactly one automobile. Exactly one automobile. Anybody can find that automobile on that photograph.
Alec, go ahead. Maybe you can find one. Huh?
Alec, if you want a brownie point.
That's why we need AI, right? Because AI would be able to spot that immediately.
The reality is that in 1900, there's exactly one automobile, and it's here. Do you see this? Now let's look at another photograph, and another photograph is exactly 13 years later. It's the same New York City, it's the same Easter Parade, 13 years later. And you will see a lot of automobiles. And there's exactly one horse-driven carriage. Alex, another attempt? There's exactly one horse-driven carriage. No? No luck?
So here it is.
So what happened is that in 13 years, the world changed. And if in 1900 you were a horse breeder, okay, or working for a supply chain of the horse industry, you are up for a surprise in the next 13 years. Now, the reality is that the transportation revolution happened in about one generation. So that is how long it took for the cars completely replace horses. And that is what is happening now with every single industry around the world. As my research team at Stanford, and as Alex and I are showing in one piece of research after another.
More importantly, if you look at the chart, which demonstrates how quickly new technology is adopted in the world, you would see that it actually takes less and less time to penetrate the market with a new technology. It's kind of frustrating that, well, whatever you did 15, 20 years ago may not even exist now as a job, and you will have to equip yourself with new tools. Think about Zoom. Zoom did not exist 20 years ago. Now it's part of everyday's life. And if you look at the companies and how quickly they generate millions of users, you could see that Airbnb took 2.5 years, Facebook 10 months. Can anyone guess what was even faster than this? ChatGPT. Anything else? There are actually two products here. We decided to play with you, but ChatGPT was the one that's easy to recognize. Another one is iPhone. I actually guess that TikTok may be somewhere there as well. So if you think about that, first of all, the pace is way, way higher. More importantly, it was really hard for all of you guys to spot that innovative idea early on. That car was indistinguishable. You could not see that. More importantly, many people did not even believe at that time that the car is that important. And I was so happy to see so many pitches targeting AI, which is probably this kind of a car in different shape or form, which may impact our lives in the next 10, 15 years, or even faster.
For the founders here, especially for those that are B2C, D2C, a piece of advice right away. Every single investor would like you to be in the ChatGPT or iPhone, which means that you have to demonstrate a very high scalability very fast. So can you reach the first million of users very, very quickly? And hopefully when you do so, you can become one of those companies. If you look at the top 10 companies in the US now, 7 out of top 10 were venture capital backed. And here is my biggest prediction for the next 10 years, is that right now, in the Valley, but also maybe around the world, there is a new generation of companies that right now are trying to raise money, maybe at this very stage today and yesterday, that will become the next trillion-dollar company. So my prediction is that over the next 10 years, we'll have between 5 and 15 companies that right now are small startups that will reach at least $1 trillion in market cap, and will join these companies and will replace other companies that right now are in their 10, 20, 30 places. So that is the power of the venture mindset. But as we're learning again and again, the venture mindset is a specifically set of rules that not only investors but also founders have to follow. So in my research at Stanford, my team and I finding all the time that the best investors follow every single of these venture mindset rules. And with our work with Alex, we found out that founders, that large companies, that regulators follow these venture mindset rules if they really would like to survive and succeed in this disruptive environment. So let me introduce the first rule, and I will not discuss all of them. That's why you have the book. And after you read the book, we'll organize an examination, okay? But the first principle is very important. The first principle is home runs matter, strikeouts don't. Here is from our research. If you look at the typical portfolio of a smart venture capitalist, then out of 20 bets on average, there will be around between 14, 15, 16 losses. There will be several that will return maybe 2 to 3 to 4x. That would be a great return, but not for the venture capital firm. And then statistically, there's going to be 1 out of 20 investments that will return 100x or more. And that is your home run. So if you look at the investment cost, and if you look at the return profile, this return profile is completely dominated by those outliers. So as a result of this, every single investor who was today looking at those pitches, every single investor is asking the question, what is the probability that this particular startup will become an outlier and return at least 100x if I put my dollar into this startup? And if you look at how the best VCs think about this is just 2 of our friends. Bill Gurley from Benchmark said, if you invest in something that doesn't work, you lose 1x of your money. If you miss Google, you lose 10,000x your money. Or as our friend Alex Rampel from Andreessen Horowitz, who is by the way now in charge of Andreessen Horowitz's $25 billion AI fund, told us, errors of omission in the VC industry are much bigger than errors of commission.
And as there are so many founders in this room, I would highly recommend you to exploit this fear. Make sure that the VC that is listening to you will feel, maybe you are the next Google or Amazon or Apple. That's critical to be aware of that kind of a mindset that VCs would apply when they will assess you and evaluate you as a startup.
So what does this mean for founders here? And I'm addressing founders who are searching now for investments. So first of all is do your homework about investors, whether those are VCs, whether those are angels. Here are a couple of specific recipes that my Stanford students that went on to become founders took my class and went on to become founders of VC-backed companies, now more than 500 of them, found very useful. First, fund size matters. I'm amazed how many founders, when they meet a venture capital or an angel investor, is not asking a question, how large is your fund? Because if you're looking for an outlier, whether it is a $50 million fund or it's a $10 billion fund, the definition of an outlier is different. And as a result of this, the entire decision-making process, the criteria that investors are going to use are very, very different. So as a result of this, whenever you talk to an investor, whenever you present to an investor, adjust for size. Now, many of my Stanford students have different decks. One is for a relatively small fund, another one is for a very large fund, because those investors expect different stuff. Second, where the fund is in its investment cycle, because most of the investment funds, VC investment funds, are in their 3 to 6 year investment horizon, whether you're at the beginning of the horizon, towards the end of the horizon. Their understanding of outliers is very different. If they have not made a single investment yet, they're looking for those outliers. If they're already towards the end of the investment horizon, they're really interested in outliers depending on what happened else in their portfolio. So as a founder, you really have to find out how successful that investor, where in the investment cycle that investor in, how much dry powder that investor has right now. Okay? So as a result of this, the performance of that investor's portfolio companies matters dramatically. So again, advice of the venture mindset is do your homework as a founder. It's not only that VCs have to do due diligence on you, but you have to do due diligence on them. And that will allow you to adjust your pitch in a dramatic way.
So where do VCs actually find these early stage startups? And many VCs ask us this question, and we decided, and Ilya's research team finally figured it out and collected information and data points about what's the source of all the most successful startups and where VCs find them. Here's the actual statistics. These are not just anecdotes, these are not just stories which may hit Wall Street Journal. This is statistics that demonstrate that actually VCs may find them pretty much anywhere. They will often listen to their portfolio company's leadership, and if there will be a reference from them, they will open that email. They may even open a cold email, and there was a special study about cold emails and outreach, and fortunately for all startup founders here, VCs do open emails pretty regularly. The actual open rate may vary from 8 to 15%. If you want to learn more, you can find an article just about that. So it's pretty impressive that there are so many methods that VCs found to find and fund their startup companies. And we've met with a few, and each one of them, not just a legendary investor, but also define their own way to find these startups. Let's look at Paul Arnold, who is the general partner of Switch Ventures. I had a chance to present to his LPs, limited partners. He's a very successful entrepreneur and successful VC. He's raising his 4th fund right now. He prefers quantitative sourcing, which means that they looked at profiles of founders very early on, even when you're in the stealth mode. So when someone added stealth mode in their LinkedIn or to other databases, his team and his algorithm will already be reviewing your company. Then they will use the quantitative and algorithmic analysis, score your company, and as a result of that, may have a direct outreach to you to get to know you very early on, even before you start to pitch to other investors. That's one of the ways. Here's another way, Ali Tamaseb from DCVC, which focuses on data. He wrote a book himself about that he prefers, when he believes that the best indicator of a successful entrepreneur is a successful previous exit. Even if this exit is very small, it still demonstrates the pattern and that potentially that founder may create the next unicorn. Data-driven approach. He looked through so many data points in order to come up to that conclusion. Finally, Cami Samuels. We had the luxury to interview her over, I think it was Sushi, where she disclosed that she relies heavily on insiders, on professors, on experts, on former entrepreneurs, because they may know something about, in her case, life sciences or biotech, specifically that may point her to a new idea or to a new wave of innovation, whether it's AI for drug discovery or just a biotech company. 3 different VCs, 3 different methods. Very unique that you can actually read more about in advance, either in our book or just from their interviews. So again, do your due diligence. VCs would expect different things from you as entrepreneurs.
And 2 additional tricks that you will not see either in the book or elsewhere for founders here. So here's the best way to contact a VC and the worst way maybe to contact a VC. The best way to contact a venture capitalist, let's say you identify the VC you really would like to get attention. The best way is to try to identify a portfolio company of that VC that is doing relatively well. The portfolio company on that VC is a board member or a board observer, and try to get in contact with one of the executives in that portfolio company. So typical active VC will have 10 to 12 portfolio companies at any point in time, plus around 10 to 15 companies that's in the past, so it's 25 companies. There's about 6 to 7 executives times 6. So in fact, you really have to identify, become very friendly, convince 1 out of 150 executives that were in the universe of that venture capitalist. That will be the single most strongest endorsement. What is the worst? The worst is via another venture capitalist. So the worst is not cold call. As Alex said, and I've demonstrated, cold calling in fact is not a bad idea if you just don't know a venture capitalist, okay? The worst is you go to a venture capitalist and the venture capitalist says, I'm really not interested in this startup, but let me introduce you to another venture capitalist. Be very, very careful about this, because the very first question that venture capitalist will ask, well, why are you introducing this company to me? Why are you not interested in that company yourself? Sometimes there could be justification. Maybe the stage is different, maybe the industry is wrong, but most of the time, that's really a negative signal. So try to avoid being introduced to an investor by another investor. If it's a venture capitalist, angel investors are different, because the angel investor invests in syndicates. So therefore, if one angel would like you to introduce to another angel, that's great. But if one VC wants to introduce you to another VC, try to avoid that.
And of course, VCs look at different lists and they follow Wall Street Journal and TechCrunch. But there is a piece of bad news to you guys. The moment when some startup or idea or your idea hit that list, it might be a bit too late. Or the most promising and transformational revolutionary idea may not be actually in that list. Here's the piece of history from a case study that Ilya put together, and we will see whether we can learn from that specific example from July 2007.
So this is an outdated case, but the idea is the same, and I'm seeing this implementation right now in the world of AI, right now. So back in 2007, the AI was file sharing, okay, of the time. And a number of VCs thought that the file sharing will be the future. There was still no iPhone, there was actually no Wi-Fi. And that was the list of all the file sharing startups in 2007. So the idea was out there. And one venture capitalist, his name was Samir Gandhi, I think he is shown on the next page. No? Let's have a look. Okay. Oh. So what happened is that Samir Gandhi, who was at the time partner at Sequoia, got this idea. So let's look at every single company. And this is what many smart VCs are doing right now with AI. They have AI vertical, let's say AI music or AI video, and they are looking at or meeting every single startup in that space. So Samir Gandhi met with, I think, 50 or 60 startups in the file sharing space, and he said no to everybody. He said no to everybody until he met randomly, it's a romantic story how they met, the two guys who were the founders of Dropbox. They didn't have the money, they didn't do anything, but in 2 minutes he decided to invest. And then he went to his partners at Sequoia and convinced to put in money. And the idea was there, so he invested not because the idea was great. He invested because he realized in 2 minutes that the founders of Dropbox knew much more about the file sharing space than him, and he talked to 50+ founding teams, and they knew more than every single founding team that he talked to. They knew every single scenario that is going to happen. And so Sequoia decided to back Dropbox, and that became one of the best investments ever, dollar per dollar of investments.
So a couple of learnings from this specific case is that, first of all, you should expect that a VC or a smart VC will come to the meeting very well prepared. You will not be able to trick them because they will most likely have had a chance to see lots of companies from that vertical. The second learning is that actually you should not ignore any meeting. So for instance, that meeting which happened, which led to fantastic funding, you could see on the picture not just the founder of Dropbox, but also Pejman Nozat, who's the owner of a rug store back then, and who made the connection with Sequoia. Never ignore meetings. Different people will lead you to the funding that you so need in order to build a company. And another learning, the third one, is that in the list that we've just demonstrated, Dropbox was not there. Meaning that if you try to understand what's going to happen, what will be the most transformational company in AI or in a specific vertical, you may not find them in the list which is published today. Just be aware of that as an investor and as a startup founder.
Another very important point about the venture mindset is that smart VCs learn how to say no, and they say no all the time. In my research, I found that for every single deal that smart VCs make, they say no 100 times, 100 to 1. So if you're a founder and the VC told you no, you're in a very good company. More importantly is to realize the deal funnel of a typical venture capitalist, typical smart venture capitalist. You start with more than 100 opportunities. And then as a founder, you really have to know where you are, because the way venture capitalists are going to assess you depends greatly on where you are in the deal funnel. In the top part of the funnel, up to around here, the question that smart VCs are going to ask is why we should not invest. So not is capitalized because that is the critical component. Why we should not invest in this startup. And once they say red flag, once they know any reason why not to invest, they will stop any due diligence on you. If they don't think that the market is large, if they don't think that IP is there, if they don't think that the founding team can implement, which is there is no team or founded to market or to product fit, that will be a red flag enough so they will move on, even if they like everything else. When they go to the bottom stage, then this very moment they switch and they started asking question why we should invest. Founders, here's a trick for you to know where you are. If you're meeting with one associate or with one partner at a time of a venture capital firm that has more than one partner, you're more or less by definition in the upper part. So that the decision-making process of that investor is, why should I not invest in you guys? So the moment you're invited to meet with more than one partner, the moment you're invited to make a presentation to the partnership, you are in the bottom. You are in the decision-making process stage where investors are asking why we should invest, or the way I like phrasing it, where we are greedy to invest in this startup. Why it's important? Because it's a completely different set of questions, completely different set of due diligence process that VCs are going to follow in the upper or in the bottom part.
And if you want to understand the psychology of VC, the best quote that we could pull from our interviews is that some VCs call themselves at this stage risk reduction engineers. They think about what would be the way to address some of the risks, because they do understand they will have to take some, but they want to minimize the risk. They want to understand what may not work and check that and make sure that they will not dump their money in either a not working technology. So expect that VCs and smart VCs, in the case of Theranos, a failed company, all smart VCs who dedicated their time and effort on investing in health tech or med tech, they actually ran a test. They sent someone to test the equipment and immediately realized that it simply does not work. It could be some financial due diligence questions, and now we see regularly reminders about that. Sometimes you just misuse the financial information or mistreat that. Or finally, that the business model, if you're not familiar with Juice Hero, that's not kind of surprising, because the device and the startup now failed for the simple reason that all the technology, the device, by the way, itself was a mechanical masterpiece. Even now, if you look and find online, you will see that all the details in motherboards and specifics of that hardware. The challenge was that the juice, which was supposed to be squeezed by a machine, could be squeezed by your hands. The moment when this news hit Bloomberg, obviously the startup was doomed. To some extent, the whole business model stopped working. The story is a bit more complicated, but it's just a great reminder. You will be evaluated, and VCs will spend tons of time. It's kind of a dream that the VC will sign a check on the spot. Some will do, but majority will spend on average 118 hours. If you want to learn more, there's an article that we published with Ilya about this number, and that's the average number.
Another trick of the venture mindset that founders, I think, really should remember, memorize, and also use is conviction beats consensus. The idea is very simple. If I look at the most successful venture capital firms in Silicon Valley, but also out there, outside Silicon Valley, the most successful ones do not require that every single partner or every single member of the investment committee agrees to invest in a startup. Very often it's enough for one partner to really want to invest. Sometimes you really just need to convince one other partner out of maybe 2 out of 7, okay? And as a founder, here is my inside trick. When you talk to a venture capitalist, to an associate, even analyst, find out how decisions are made in that venture capital firm. Does that venture capital firm require unanimity, consensus? Or, in fact, they're trying actively to disrupt consensus? Because that will matter a great deal for how you're going to navigate dealing with that venture capital firm. So in the venture capital world, conviction beats consensus. By the way, it's the same for those founders here who have a lot of co-founders. If you have, let's say, 2 co-founders, if all 3 co-founders agree all the time on everything, that may not be a good idea if you are in the space that is being disrupted. Just two very quick examples of VCs that we know very well and that are great VCs. So Brian Roberts, who is a managing partner of Venrock, a fantastic venture capital firm. Venrock, that if you look at the returns, is by far one of the most successful venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. They don't have an investment committee. So every single partner, including Brian, just comes in, tries to convince other partners, but that they have to make their own individual decision, even though they invest on behalf of everybody else. Or think about Nagraj Kashyap, who was the managing partner at Qualcomm Ventures, the first institutional investor in Zoom. Then he founded M12, the corporate venture fund of Microsoft, and now he is managing his own fund. When he came into Microsoft, his condition in establishing M12 was that he will introduce a number of rules. One was called anti-veto. We all know what veto is, okay? Anti-veto means is that if the rest of the team wanted to invest, he could not veto, but if nobody wanted to invest out of his team, he could anti-veto that and proceed to invest. And not surprisingly, M12 is by far one of the most successful corporate venture capital funds. So founders, so VCs here try to implement this. Founders here try to find out how your investors, potential investors, making decisions.
Which means that your pitch deck may not be the most important thing that you have to put together. Maybe some due diligence about the decision-making process is so critical. However, of course, in the pitch deck, one slide is the one that is so often, unfortunately, missed, or there is not enough focus on that slide. These are the slides which VCs pay a lot of attention to, and so often they're pushed to the very last slide on the deck. Actually, Ilya's research suggests that VCs instantly go to that slide when they share the link with them so that they could spend more time on understanding more information about the founders and co-founders. We've not seen this kind of experience with the pitches that we had a chance to observe earlier today, but still, I would prefer to hear more and more about the founding team, not just about the founders, but also first employees.
And specifically the founder to market fit, the founder to product fit. Why you are the best person, why your team is the best to implement this specific idea. So the team drives success. VCs know this. This is from my research. This is the importance of the team in driving success relative to all the other factors. And all these factors are important, but they'll fade in comparison with the team. So it's all about who is going to implement. But if you look at the failure, the teams are also behind the failure. Again, there are other factors, but VCs know. Like Samir Gandhi, who interviewed 50+ file-sharing companies, smart VCs know that it's all about the implementation. That's all about who is going to implement. And by the way, notice that I use the word team. I'm trying not to use the word founders in this context, because smart VCs know founders by themselves will not be able to scale a startup. It's all about whom they are able to attract as a team. So if you're the founder here, another inside trick, if you're raising money from angels, it's okay to be founders. But if you're raising more money from venture capitalists, it is not okay to be founders. You have to be with a team. Smart VCs will ask to meet the entire team because they know you'll be able to scale quickly only and only if there's a fantastic team behind you. Here's a very quick example that we're also given more detail in the book. My prediction is that you've never heard about this company unless you read the book very carefully. Tiny Speck. It was a gaming company that miserably failed. And Andrew Bradshaw, a partner at Excel, was one of the investors. And one day he got an email from Tiny Speck saying, "Sorry, Andrew, we failed and you lost your money. But the good news is that we still have some millions of dollars left in our bank account, so we're going to return them to you." And Andrew Bradshaw went back to his partners and said, "I'm still betting on the team. I'm still betting on the team. And I do not want them to return the money." This is what he had to say about the team. Tiny Speck is still primarily a team bet. Notice again, he's using the word team, not founders. They have failed with one another, succeeded with one another, and everything in between. So he effectively told them, "Guys, you still have my millions of dollars left. Go out, pivot, do whatever. I still have a trust in you." And they went, and the gaming did not work out, but they realized that because they had hundreds of gaming developers that had to chat with each other, work with each other, and they were around the world, and there was no communication platform, they created their own communication platform. And they thought, well, maybe we can use that communication platform to offer to other companies. And this is how Slack was born. But notice is that investors such as Andrew Bradshaw with this fully developed venture mindset do it not because they are sure that every single tiny speck will develop into Slack. They know that every single successful Slack in the world will have moments very close to failure. And they know, like Bill Gurley, who said, well, you can lose only 1x. He could lose only his millions of dollars, but he could have missed tens of thousands of X's. Okay? So again, that was one of the most successful of Excel's bets, but it came not because of luck, it came because of very strategic venture-minded bet. And is the team's role more critical in the age of AI? So some people, of course, say that, no longer, we will need humans soon. My belief, based on everything I observe right now, and of course my team is doing a lot of research on AI, is that the role of the founders and role of the team is going to be even more important. So if you're an AI startup, it's going to be much, much more important. I can spend another hour telling you why that is the case. If you look at all the unicorns from 2024, by the way, my research, we've just done this, 46% for the entire year and a larger fraction the second half of the year are AI startups. And especially for these startups, because of the speed of transition, because of the scalability factor, who is implementing is critically important. So I believe that the team factor is going to shoot up from 60% to maybe 85 to 90%.
The results about AI startups and unicorns are not yet published on LinkedIn. So please follow Ilya and his LinkedIn page because he will publish that in the next few months. That's going to be, I think, a very interesting piece of research about specifically unicorns in AI space. Look, and finally, great things take time. You have to get ready for a very long journey with your VCs, and VCs, well, they are very patient investors. If you think about the time that it takes for a company to become a unicorn, a successful unicorn, you may see it may take 6, 7, 8 years. Well, maybe a mania may slightly decrease that number to maybe 3, 4 years, but still will deal with the averages longer term, probably about the same time frame. And you could see that some companies took even longer to become unicorns, and even longer for VCs to exit and for founders to actually monetize all of their hard work together with the team. So it's a long journey. And more importantly, this is not going to be a very fun journey, and you could be ridiculed on the way. Maybe some of you remember this kind of nice picture when they were smiling and thinking, well, AI is good, computer vision is nice, but, well, maybe it may not recognize and see the puppy here. Look, I used to be a product lead at AWS AI team for their first device in AI space. It was 2018, and I remember how profoundly I believed in technology. Nowadays, it's all kind of super clear that AI is here to stay. Who is this? Some of you may recognize that's Aitana, who's the fully virtual persona who does not exist as a human being, but still generates some money as an influencer. This is all becoming a true reality, and the demo that we had a chance to see of all the startups just demonstrated that. It's all about AI or fatigue management. It's an AI application, but leveraging other data points. So tech may take years to actually deliver the value that it promised. This is not Roomba. This is not a vacuum cleaner. This is a Kiva robot. But if you carefully read right there at the bottom, It was founded in 2003 as a company. Then it launched their first prototype in 2004. The first commercial pilot and release was in 2005. And only now, after Kiva Robots was acquired by Amazon, only now we see the impact of robots in the warehouses of Amazon. How many employees are right now at Amazon? 1.5 million. How many robots are employed by Amazon? 750,000. So it's a 1 robot per 2 employees already. And you could see that the curve is not slowing down. And Ilya knows that this is the curve that you would expect to see pretty much at every revolutionary technology. So our piece of advice to all of you guys is to just go and build. If you're not yet involved in AI, do this. We did it ourselves. We recorded this kind of a video just with the help of AI. And I didn't approve that. I just said, okay, that's fine. That's fine with me. Book covers. Look, I mean, I could tell you so many jokes and funny stories about the number of months, and very tough conversations with our wives as well about the book cover, because some people agreed that this is the nicest color in the nicest book cover in the world or not. More importantly, AI can now generate book covers, the ones that you potentially may actually like, I will tell you a bit more, but pretty quickly. Or look at that. Maybe you may not need us on this stage anymore. We actually created a custom GPT. We uploaded our book. And now I sometimes talk to my own book to find a relevant example or to address a specific question or get ready for an interview, because it's easy. I may not remember all of the case studies, and actually it can pull it from different chapters. It can put it together as a very nice chapter or a very nice answer to a question and tailor it. Super easy. It's a ChatGPT, but with a custom-made algorithm. But the most important piece here is the following. The video took just a few hours to build. Book covers were generated in less than 1 hour of training. And the custom GPT took us less than 15 minutes. That's what we mean by pace. That's why if you're not yet involved in AI, go and do this. If you're not a startup, I think you're just building it slow enough. Build it faster. That would be my piece of advice.
So what is the most important lesson in innovation? And now we're stepping back from individual founders and look at big innovation. The disruption that I started with when I mentioned the cars replacing horses. What is happening now? To understand this, we should go to an amazing scientist, Roy Amara, who said many, many years ago the following. We tend to overestimate the effect of a disruptive technology in the short run and underestimate the effect in the long run. So very often what's happening is that there's a disruptive technology appearing. Everybody is very hyped about it. Then it does not work as intended very quickly, and people get very cold on that. While in reality what's happening is that it's starting slow but inevitable rise. At some point it will become exponential. And right now, I believe that there are dozens and dozens disruptive technologies in every sphere, from mining to biotech, from agriculture to robotics, from defense industries to government technologies and so on, that are being disrupted as we speak, but many of them are here. They're at this stage. So there could be a lot of hype. The hype may subside. This is when the greatest founders are going to come in. This is where the best investors are going to make a lot of decisions. And then we're going to have a huge Amara effect. This is what's going to happen with the era of disruption. The difference between those eras and today's era, I think, is going to happen much, much faster. Okay?
Look, we've shared so many data points with you, but if you need more data, you can also look at the Unicorn report. That's the statistics and data which Ilya's team collected throughout many years. And now we have an updated version of this report. How many pages? I think 300 and more pages. So please scan the code.
You can upload this Unicorn report in your LLM as well, and then talk to it. So this consists of all the LinkedIn posts on unicorns that I have posted, and this is being updated monthly. So if you're interested, especially if you're a founder, if you're an investor, would like to understand more than 100 of parameters for companies that become unicorns or have a chance to become unicorns, have a look. Or, as Alex mentioned, have a look at the posts on LinkedIn. Okay, thank you so much, everybody.
So let me thank Paul, Sophie, Alec, and the whole team which organized this event. That was a pleasure to take part in it. Thank you for reading a book. It was a pleasure to sign them. Trust me, signing a book is not that hard as writing one. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.